Welcome everybody. My name is Barbara and I am the Ranger National Commissioner. Tonight we are pleased to show you an important technique in Red Branch. Roberta and Martina are going to talk about cooking in fire, not only a practical technique. In fact, we consider cooking a real tool for education and growth of the girls. In this webinar, we will discover all the secrets of cooking. And in the link below in the banner, you can find some information about it. As you know, in chat, you can ask your question. Have fun and enjoy your meal.
Hello, everyone. In this first part of this presentation, I will talk about what we eat en route, with a focus on the nutritional aspects. It is important to remember that the route is to be considered an activity with a high energetic consumption because it requires our body a prolonged effort over time. To be able to deal with it, it is necessary to support an adequate diet that provides the necessary reserves for this physical effort. It is very important to follow a specific diet in order to don't run into physical problems and be too weak to continue the activity. It is also necessary to find the right balance between energy intake, weight, thirst, and digestibility. The first thing to take into consideration is that the caloric consumption of a day of route is almost 3 times more than one of a normal day. So it will be necessary to provide our body with useful energy reserves. As Feuerbach said, we are what we eat. Therefore, it is essential to arrive prepared to face the route, also from the point of view of the menu, and not to go shopping at the last minute, grabbing what is faster and at first seem light in the bag. It must be remembered that the route menu, unlike a normal menu, must take into account the physical effort, the weight of what we are carrying in our backpack, the size of the food, and as little waste as possible. Our body needs to have an energetic reserve ready to use. In order to do this, it is necessary to do not miss some elements that can be transformed into energy during the course of the activity. Those are carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and vitamins. Among the best nutritional sources we need, there are carbohydrates, such as bread, pasta, potatoes, and rice. They are essential to be eaten before start walking, so that the body can gradually get useful resources. For this reason, about 50% of the diet before and during the route must be made up of carbohydrates. However, let's not forget that muscles, in order to perform their activity in the best way possible, also need a supply of sugars. For example, those contained in starchy foods and fruit, even dried, which are slower absorption and guarantee a longer lasting energy reserve. It is better to use fresh bread, which, with some precautions, is certainly more genuine than industrial sandwich bread. Then we have fats. Our body, in case of need, can always rely on a substantial reserve of energy to draw on when it's free of carbohydrates. These are fats or lipids, such as oil, butter, lard, etc. They must not exceed 20% of the daily energy requirement. The fats accumulated in adipose tissue are certainly an important energy reserve, but it must be remembered that for their transformation, the body requires great effort and twice the amount of oxygen compared to the consumption of carbohydrates. The third element is proteins, such as meat, fish, eggs, cheese, milk, and legumes. Even if they don't help that much with energy, they have the advantage of ensuring a fundamental supply of amino acids useful for the constructions of cells and their replacement. The last element we take into consideration are vitamins. We talked about energy, but vitamins are also important for the proper functioning of our body. Those of group B, for example, fight fatigue, while vitamin E improves the use of your oxygen. And vitamin C helps the body immunitary defenses. It is important to think about these bad habits, which we have en route. The small amount of fruit and vegetables, or not having them at all. Too many sandwiches, pizza, and fried food. Too many sweets, snacks, or other similar food. Unbalanced meals and snacks, or eating at the wrong time. Eating at fast foods and the freeze-dried food. And now, Roberta will continue.
Thank you, Martina, and good evening to everyone. In this second part, I will talk about how we cook during excursions. Generally speaking, of course, we all like cooking and eating, and every region in Italy has its own traditions. But when it comes to how we cook, there is an eternal fight among rangers between gas burner and spirit burner. Each side thinks that their method is the best, of course, but truth is that in both cases, there are advantages and disadvantages. Let's see them more in detail. The gas burner, which is called the fornelletto in Italian, uses not refillable gas tank filled with butane and propane mix, usually. The burner is technically made of two parts. The burner itself, which is light, small, and foldable, and the gas tank. The gas burner, it's easy to fire up, and the flame is easy to adjust while you're cooking, and it usually cooks your meal faster than the spirit burner. On the downside, you need to bring with you all the gas tanks that you may need during the excursions. If it's longer, like a week, you need a lot of them. And even more important, you need to bring home the used tanks. This means, of course, some extra weight and extra space in your backpack. It is important to bring home the used tanks because they need to be disposed in the proper way. You also need to bring the camping pots or mess tin to cook in. Now let's see the spirit burner. That's called the spiritiera in Italian. It uses denaturated alcohol, which you can easily find everywhere. So you can buy it in every store, so you can plan to resupply during a longer period excursion, and so you can carry less weight in your backpack. The spirit burner comes with the correct stove, which can cook for 2 or 3 people, so you don't have to bring extra pots or mess tin. And it's made of a material that's light and it's overall compact. And it's generally cheaper than the burner, and the alcohol is also cheaper than the gas tanks. Although, in the downside, it takes longer to fire up, especially if it's windy or cold, because the alcohol needs longer to warm up. And also the flame is not easily adjustable while you're cooking, and it's generally slower than the gas burner. Although it needs to be said that when you're running low on gas, also the gas burner is quite slower. Of course, we cannot determine a winner in this fight. Everyone has its own opinion, and you should use what is better for you, depending on your cooking habits, how many people are eating, so how many people you're cooking for, or also the region you're living in. Anyway, it is important to be prepared and know the pros and cons of the cooking method that you are using. This is a nice activity that you can do with your fire. It's built your own spirit burner with 2 cans. It's easy. You will find all the detailed instruction in the video description and also in the chat. And I tried with my fire to do this activity. It's fun and it's really not difficult at all. And the burns, so the spirit burns, work really well. They cook milk and everything, just like the one you buy in the store. I just suggest to bring some extra cans because they usually break easily when you're cutting them, when you're building your own burner. And also make sure to put something underneath the burner while you're using it because they become very, very hot. So you can burn if you're using directly on the grass. So maybe you put a stone underneath, but it's a very nice activity that you can try. Trapper is another method of cooking that we use sometimes. It's a very essential technique because you're cooking only with the material from nature. It is a cooking technique that requires long time, so we don't use it in every excursion, but in some well-planned occasion in which we organize the excursion in order to have enough time to cook with this method. Of course, we also need to make sure that the place we're going to, that in the place that we're going to, we can light a fire. And we need a temperature of approximately 200 degrees to cook. So the first things that you need to do is to make a fire that lasts at least a couple of hours in order to have a lot of hot coals to cook in. So how to tell the temperature of your coils? Just put your hand above the coils, a little above the coils, and count how long you can keep your hand there. If it's less than 5 seconds, it's not warm enough. If it's 4 or 5, you're quite there. If it's 2 or 3 seconds, the temperature is perfect to have a good meal. And if you can keep your hand less than 1 second, it is too hot. The temperature is too hot. You'll have a burn food, so just spread around the coils and you'll have it a little less hot. And remember that while you're waiting for your coils to be ready, you need to build your skewers by peeling the green woods. And also you can build some grills by weaving them together, like you see in the pictures. They're good to cook meat, sausages, vegetables, and sometimes also bread, like you see in the pictures. And if you find some stones, you can also sterilize them with the fire and use them as pans. And you can easily cook egg, meat, vegetables. It's quite easy. And you can also use natural bowls like potatoes, eggplants, peppers, onions, small pumpkins, apples, and oranges. So basically all fruit and vegetables that can resist to hot temperature, because you will have to empty them and put the food inside and just place them in the coils and you'll have a meal ready for you. So that was all for how we cook. Thank you, Martina, and it's your turn again.
Thank you, Roberta. It was really interesting. We learned something new. So in the third part of the presentation, I will talk about some preservation techniques and other aspects of the cooking. And I start with this, with the Girl Guide is kind to animals and respects all living things, which I don't need to describe because everyone knows where it's from. Cooking in fire is a fundamental technique, as we already said. It requires great creativity, manual skill, but certainly also logistical skills and essentiality. In the backpack, we often try to put above all foods that weigh little, that would last for a long time, especially en route if we know that on our path we will not be able to refuel often, that are balanced for a varied and healthy menu, that are energetic to give us the strength along the way, and often that they are cheap. Satisfying all these conditions is certainly not easy. There is also another aspect to consider, which is important both for us and for the environment: packaging. What wraps, maintains, and preserves our food, it is something that we will then have to carry with us and then dispose. It could be difficult to carry it in our backpacks if we are in the mountains or on the road, maybe in a place where we can't dispose it. We need to think about this aspect before beginning our activity. We should purchase food with a little amount of packaging. We should be light, small, and easily recyclable. In fact, the best thing is to be able to make a small waste bag that is very light and occupies a little space so that you can dispose of the waste at home or if you don't have the opportunity along the way. Here we have some ideas of activities to do on fire about this topic. A first idea could be a challenge between the rangers, where they have to guess how long it takes for the different items to decompose. Another one could be a memory game with different recycling icons. And a third one could be a challenge where at the end of a scout trip, you weigh their waste bag and the lightest wins. Now, I'm going to talk to you about some preservation techniques, which allow the food to last longer than usual. When preparing the menu for a route, it is important to consider the weight, size, and packaging of the individual food, especially when you can't buy any food along the way. Often, the menu is full of long-life canned foods, and we leave fruit and vegetables at home. But we need to remember that these are essential foods to recharge our body with fibers and vitamins. And then we can ask ourselves, it is possible to eat fruit and vegetables during a route without carrying kilos of food that deteriorate really quickly in the heat? Yes, it is possible with drying. Drying is one of the many methods of preserving fruit and vegetables that it consists in eliminating the water from the food. Of course, the drying technique has some pros and some cons. Let's see them together. For example, a pro can be that the low weight of the dried food, because vegetables contains also about 90% of water. The little storage space, because dried food loses a lot of volume. The fridge, most of the time, is not necessary. They're tasty because they keep their flavor. They have a high fiber content, and they also keep minerals and vitamins. We have two cons about drying. The first is that it requires time for cleaning and the food and especially drying it. And the fact that before you eat the vegetables, you need to rehydrate it. So then we have, of course, a natural question, how can you dry the food? There are three different ways. The first that we take into consideration is the dryer. The dryer dries food in an homogeneous way. It is cheap, and it dries food in a relatively short amount of time. For example, pears can be dried between 15 and 30 hours. An apple can be dried in between 6 and 8 hours. Some zucchini in 8/15 hours. And peppers between 12 and 15 hours. Then we have a second technique that we can use, which is the oven, which most of us have at home. It takes a very long time, the double compared to the dose of the dryer. And it also uses up more electricity than the dryer. Then we have a third technique, very, very natural, which is the sun. It takes from 3 to 4 days for drying the food, and it can be done only during the day to prevent the humidity of the night from slowing down the whole process. And it is very much hot sun needed. Looking at the timing on the consumption, the dryer is the preferred method, and it requires a small initial investment and minimum expenses. And it's also possible to use it in all places, just with a power outlet. Then I'm I'm going to talk to you about a second preservation technique, which is vacuum sealing. Vacuum packaging means almost completely removing the air from a wrapper containing a food, making the vacuum inside it. Once the air is removed, there is a slowdown in all biological and enzymatic activities. Then the food lasts longer. Not only that, since the bag is waterproof, it is not affected by humidity, one of the reasons why our foods deteriorate in a short amount of time. By sorting the food under vacuum, the life of the food is enormously extended. The vacuum packaging maintains the freshness and taste of the food longer. You could have the opportunity to pack fresh food in portion in order to be able to eat it on the road. You can vacuum pack almost every kind of food, vegetables, meat, doughs, etc. The food can be either raw or cooked. For every kind of food, it is important to know how much longer each of them will last. Let's see them together. For example, for fruits and vegetables, cooked or fresh, it is possible to double their storage time, and therefore goodness and freshness. In the case of fresh foods, it is possible to vacuum seal them whole or already cut in slices or pieces. In the case of cooked foods, in addition to vacuum bags, it is important to know that there are also jars that could be vacuum sealed. Talking about the bread, if left at room temperature, it will last no more than 2 days, but if it's vacuum packed, we can preserve its fragrance even after 7 to 8 days. Regarding meat and fish, in the case of vacuum-packed conservation of fresh meat, its characteristic can be kept unalterated for at least 5-6 days, compared to a period of approximately 2 days if simply stored in the fridge. As for fresh fish, which usually last no longer than 2-3 days, vacuum-packed can be stored up to 5-6 days in the fridge without any problem. About cheese and cured meats, depending on their aging, they can last up to 6 months. And I finished, so I give the word to Roberta again.
Thank you, Martina. Really interesting. And now we are to the last part of our talk, and there is more to it. In this part, we decided to summarize some examples of activities that go beyond the simple cooking techniques, to show that even an easy and everyday practice like cooking can be a starting point for meaningful thoughts and ideas to improve ourselves. We choose some activities in relation to the 5 aims of Scouting that we all know very well. Here, there are 2 examples of activity related to health and strength. For example, you can create, as Martina already said, a well-balanced menu for excursion and everyday life together with your rangers. And you can also debate with them on this quote, "We are what we eat." What does it mean? How we relate to this expression? And so on. For the practical sense, for example, you can make your own herbal tea bags after learning about the different herbs, their characteristics, and also their beneficial effects. Or you and your rangers can learn how to make bread from scratch. And if you have the opportunity, you can also meet a real baker and maybe learn some tricks. You can also make a vegetable garden with your rangers. This will give them the responsibility and will help them know which vegetables are in which season in order to eat always very fresh food. For the sense of God, you can propose a vigil or a spiritual activity regarding the Gospel of Matthew, "You are the salt of the earth," reflecting on how do you give flavor to life, and also on how do you testimony your faith. For the service to others, you can easily help in a soup kitchen or get informed inform your local priest if there's someone sick or old near to you that you can help in going grocery shopping. This will also help the rangers to be thankful for the simple things that we so easily take for granted. And last, for character training, you and your rangers can get informed about sustainable nutrition, and you can learn and put into practice what can we do in our everyday life to leave the world a better place. For example, choose local food, do not waste food, and maybe you can also invent some recipe to use leftovers. Of course, these are just some examples of activity to give you an idea on how in Red Branch, even a simple and practical thing like cooking can open up to really a lot more. In this last slide, I just want to remind you that you can find a link to all the material that we showed you in the description and also in the chat. And you will find also some recipe that I bet and I hope you will try. So have a good journey and have a good meal. And I'll give my word to Barbara, or we'll see if there are some questions.
Thank you, Roberta and Martina. Congratulations for your talk. We have some comments in the chat. I'd like to thank Cataldo that he says good cooking to have a better scouting. It's real. Why?
Yeah.
Why, Roberta and Martina?
Yes, it's a very good way of saying, and I think it helps really to be a better scout because if you eat well and proper, as Martina showed, your health and strength grows, and so you can walk easily, you can do all the activity better, and your body fits better. And cooking together is also a way of improving the community, the fire community. We usually eat and cook all together in a circle. So it's an easy way to approach and to talk also about all things. It's easy and sometimes also difficult because when you eat together, everything comes out a little easier. And so you can get in a relationship with some of your rangers in an easy way. It really becomes natural to talk in front of a very good and healthy food. So this just to give you some examples. And then, of course, if you think a good menu, your backpack can weigh less, and so you can walk easier. And also the road is improving, of course. And I don't know if Martina wants to comment again on this one, but...
I agree. I think that, yeah, if you eat well, of course you feel better with your body, but I think also you feel better with your mind. So you can think better and then act better consequently. So yeah, I think it's a really true sentence.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Let's see if there are some other questions. Okay, one for Martina maybe. If you're ready, Martina. Is it possible to buy food along the way during the route? Would you suggest it?
But of course, it's possible to do it. You can do that if you are prepared and you prepare the route in a good way, so you know exactly in what cities or town or small villages are you stopping by. If you know that in advance, you can contact the stores that are in these places and be sure that they are open when you're gonna stop by there. In this way, you can buy local food, also help the local trending, yes, okay. People by buying food from there, and also your backpack will be light, so the walking could be easier with a light backpack.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, it's true. There's another question about water. How many liters of water?
Well, that's a very good question. There's not just one answer, I think. In some way, it depends on which type of route you're doing. So where are you walking, in which season also. But for example, in the summer, which is usually the season we walk more, we suggest at least 2 liters to have enough bottles to fill 2 liters of water that can be refilled during the day if necessary. And it's also necessary to plan in the proper way the route and to make sure that you're able to refill water during the day, or at least where you're stopping at night. And according to where and when you can find the water, you need to adjust the amount of water that you're taking in your backpack. But 2 liters is an average to not worried about not having enough water. It also depends on what are you cooking. If you're cooking pasta and you're using a lot of water, maybe you need to bring more. If you're cooking something that do not request a lot of water, maybe you can have a little less. And that's approximately an idea.
Okay, thank you, Roberta. That is a simple question. How many meals do you suggest us for our routes in a day?
So I'm answering from an Italian point of view, but I know other countries has different ideas and uses and costumes. So I'll suggest like 3 meals as we do at home. So a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Of course, balanced with the physical effort that you have to do. So if you like, a lunch can be different if you have to walk in the afternoon or if you don't have to walk in the afternoon, because of course, if you have to walk, you need energy, but at the same time, not something that like puts you down, let's say, or make you more tired. So I suggest 3 meals and maybe some fruit as a snack between them. And of course, a lot of water.
Also dry food like nuts and that are full of protein and can help us during breaks.
Yeah, because
as snacks, probably one just to have one in the morning and one in the afternoon can be good. And it helps us keep walking and not have to stop because we're hungry. So there's one specific question, Martina, I think for you. Can you take the vacuum packed meats in your backpack, and how long can it last at a higher temperature?
Okay,
so meats especially.
I think it depends because if they are raw, they don't last that much time out of the fridge. They can last more time vacuum sealed, but in the fridge. I think if they are cooked, they can last more time, but it depends also which kind of meat it is, if it's chicken or...
Of course.
So it really depends. So maybe it can be 1 day. And also depends how is the high temperature. What do we mean with high temperature?
Yes,
so there are really different factors to consider.
But for sure, if you take it in a vacuum packed, it can last longer than if you don't vacuum pack it.
Yes. So you take the time that you know that lasts without vacuum packaging, and you add like maybe half of a day or a day, because I'm sure like in a winter activity, it can last a lot of time more, but here they can asking a high temperature. So
yes, so
I think a little bit more. Okay, do you have other questions?
No.
Okay.
Well, one thing that we didn't say, but maybe it's correct to say, is that the backpack doesn't need to be too heavy, of course, otherwise we cannot move. So I would say around 12 kilos, maybe. That would be a good weight for the week, of course, not for a 2 days excursion. And so you need to pay really close attention to what you put inside. because it really needs to be balanced between weight and give all the good nutrition sources for the activity. So we cannot just decide on the last minute what we are eating, and it's to be really planned closely. And this extra work that you put into writing the right menu and do all the resources will get back to you when you're walking with your rangers. So it's a good investment to take some time to plan also the menu and not just the place you're going to. So that's our suggestions.
Yes.
Okay.
What do you think about pre-cooked food, like stuff, for example?
Like
rice,
what?
stuff.
Like the
Pre-cooked.
I think like the personally, no, I mean, I think that you can have some alternatives with what we said today. For example, with drying the food, you can have like you can make a soup and then dry it. Like you can dry the ingredients in order to make a soup, and then bring them with you in your backpack. And they are light. I think as much like as a dried, like let's say commercial soup, and then you can make it just with water and salt and some spices, and you make like a natural soup. So I think as more natural we eat, as better it is. Roberta for sure knows better than me this.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think there are different types of pre-cooked meat or pre-dried. There are some that it's dry food, so you can do what you did, what you said, Martina. So you dry it yourself instead of buying the one that's ready made. And there's also some food that's pre-cooked, so that it takes less to cook when you are in the excursion. But the downside to that, it's not healthy, first of all, and it also weighs a lot because it has already all the water inside. So usually it's not worthy, and we tend not to do it. We prefer just to bring the food and cook it right there. It's also important to keep in mind the duration of cooking of every meal. So if you want to make rice, for example, that takes longer to cook, all the fire maybe should arrange to do the rice in the same time, so that you cook in the same amount of time, and not one that's finishing first and then the other one late. And so you decide this day we cook for, I don't know, 30 minutes instead of 10, and so we can do we can cook something that takes longer, or you can do it in the evening if you have more time, and cooking something faster during the lunch if you need to reach the place for sleeping, for example. You don't want to lose too much time and reach the place at night, for example.
Yeah, this was, I'm smiling because this used to be an issue in my fire, because we had people that were eating at one time and other people in another time, and then in the end we weren't eating all together as a community. So then we decided to have the same amount of time to cook in order to be able to eat together.
A good idea is to choose the same menu for all your fires, so everyone is cooking the same thing, time is equal for everyone, taking into consideration intolerance, of course. And that can be a good idea, so you're all planned and in the same way. And that's it. So, Barbara, do you want to add something else?
We have seen that cooking is not only cook and eat. Cooking is a real activity in scouting. So we had to prepare a program and do in the better way. Then we can conclude. We can finish. I thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Martina. Thank you, everybody, for attention. and good journey.
Good journey.
Ce l'ho fatta.